Hello, everyone. Ethan here, and I'm here to tell you more about the system I use for my solo D&D campaign, and more in the future. That's right, I am here to tell you all more about the background of the Twisted Worlds. But it's not in the way you'd think. See, I'm going to talk to you about the mechanics behind it and why I made it. See, the reason why I made it is simple. I wanted to try DMing. However, whenever you go to like prepaid adventure books, they'll railroad players completely. However, in a homebrew campaign, you'd have to come up with every single thing along the way, and that's too much to some people's minds. I know it'll put a lot of pressure on mine. So, I thought of like a middle ground. Like, you got some pre-made scenarios, some pre-made characters and whatnot involved, but also leave it open to chance and not railroad players, thus creating more freedom and player choice, which is what I love most in gaming. So, with that explanation out of the way, let's go dive deep into my system itself and all my notes and stuff written down for it. Alright, let's start simple with the math. I did a lot of thoughts, try to make this work as best as I can, and I ultimately came up with a simple mathematic guide. Basically, I set it up so I have 6 characters that can aid players, and each of those 6 characters would have 4 villains that they can be connected to. The 4 villains are from a list of 8. Now there's 3 guides per villain, meaning each of the 8 villains has 3 guides they're connected to. And each villain has an end goal, which leads to calamities. As you can see from all this, I tried to work really hard on what to deal with. And this would basically be the roadmap for it. They can pick up an item, or a quest or whatever that will lead them to a guide. Or like a quest or something that they need to ask a guide for help for. That would lead them to an item that will correlate with a villain. In some cases, the villain would not be connected to the previous guide at all, so you need to connect them to another guide. Then the villain would have an item connected to their intended calamity, and the calamity would be the end result. This is just a sample of what a playthrough with the system would be like. However, I forgo guides completely in solo play because I already know what all the guides would lead to. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. But this is like a simple rundown. In the math of it, is also pretty simple. The map of the journey will go for, think of numerical values for each certain thing. Like, if their first guide differs from what their villain is, they can still play a role in how it affects your world. Then there's the core item, which leads them to a villain. Second guide, if applicable, the villain, and then the calamity is the result of all the math. However, add modifiers for your key locations, and more importantly, for specific actions that would affect the world and calamity. That is, any event where your players will make their choices to do something crazy. Don't deny them a chance. In fact, punish them for making that chance. They want to make a nuke? Let them. But make everything radioactive and cause detrimental harm to the world and make them much more difficult to survive. You know how it is? So, let's go into more of the math here. For example, we've got two guides. A vial of pure demon blood, which is an calamity item. Our old friend Saria, who was in Gordor's Adventure. Ugnog's right there on the paper, so. And a random city I made up for this guide that I have never used, really. Equaling the calamity at 7 value. And plus 2 value left over for a different calamity. So for example, Aldaria is connected to different villains, so is Ugnog. The city is involved as well. See, Aldaria, Ugnog, there's the city. The villain has the highest modifier for the plot, but it doesn't mean they're exact. The item is the second highest value, tied with the city or optional location. That means, depending on what you do, or where your players go, or who they're up against, can dramatically change the events of the projected story. Fairly simple, right? Guides are very specific. They're basically like NPC or DM controlled characters and whatnot, all that stuff. However, they're mainly there to like have like a little assistance to players if they need be. Now they would be very specific, like depending on what you make, they can have like a different effect on the party. Like a necromancer could talk to the dead around them to get information about the area or whatever. They're also there to be in case the party's short of one of a type of character that they need in their party. However, they're also, since they're DM controlled, they're going to be extremely powerful, but they're the bare minimum of support. Like, if you're fighting a boss that's flying and you have none of your party have an effective way to hit them, they can come in with like either crossbows or, depending on how big it is, they can rally support with catapults and whatnot. That is the point of guides. They also are a source of information for your game world, which you don't have to implement. As I've said before, I didn't use in the Twisted World solo campaign with Gorder. But it is an option there if you want to use it for other players. So let's move on to the next one. I'm sure I don't need to explain this to you. Every good story needs a good villain. Someone to focus your anger on, someone to take down, someone you need to fight against, all that stuff. Someone who's aiming to do harm to others. Like that sort of thing. 3 of my 8 villains have showed up in the Twisted Worlds Gorder solo campaign. And since we mentioned them before, let's talk about Saria. She would be involved with certain characters and certain roles they have. So basically, if you, as said before, the math, the guide would connect to a villain, but again, you don't necessarily have to do that. But yeah, short, simple explanation. You need a good villain. For as stated before, my 6 guides, and there's 8 villains. Now let's talk about the end part of a villain's scheme. This is where the nitty-gritty of the system comes in. As said, all sorts of factors could lead to, specifically, a different calamity. Which is what I did with Carlisle and Verakus at the end of Gorder's journey. Due to the fact that from Nada Dun, the world got gold cursed, Carlisle was more in tune with it. But more specifically, due to Barrismong being involved and he being a spectral ghost, and for Shan'Sera's original plot to involve Verakus, all these modifiers can come together to create a calamity. That's what led to him being right at the end. Now, why is this specific? Well, as stated, 6 guides, 8 villains, but there's 20 different calamities I have down. That's right, 20. Meaning, there's a way for all of them to lead to different parts. Like a player could screw up the world to such a bad point that the villain and the plot have nothing to do with it, with the calamity that will come at the end. Which is why this is the most varied of the variables of the lot. What I did is simple. I wrote down 20 different keywords that can be used to describe the power that a creature has. At the front of the book, I showed you before, some of my keywords include many things. Verakus in particular is necrotic. That's his keyword. Barrismong, his keyword's ethereal. as such, Varakas, I made him a lich god. Well, Barasmong is like a ghostly soldier. These keywords are important for you to help make your own calamity. And now that that's done, now that I talked to you about a lot about the three key variables and what can influence them, let's talk about how. Let's talk about a thing of funny of balance, order, and chaos, and what better way to influence that than the rolling of the dice or the lack thereof. Let's go to how a campaign would work. Here we go, back to the book. Different types of campaigns. Let's talk about a fate campaign. It's just what I call railroaded campaigns. It's like you plan everything out. And yeah, it's linear. So basically, that is rolling. So basically, you're just set up the story as is. I personally don't like doing this. I like letting the randomness do things. But some people like to hold things to a certain point and have like full control of the story. Like modules for Dungeons and Dragons and all that. And I'm like, you know what? It's fair. It's not for me, but the option's there. A twisted campaign is the intended way to play in the Twisted Worlds. Players' decisions start the campaign where the guide is determined by the result, and the minimum number of dice to control the flow of the campaign. Like you can roll a connected villain from the guide, and then roll a connected item for the calamity to them. That is the intended effect. Chaos campaign. Random, unpredictable. The epitome of chaos. This is what I do in my solo campaign. Basically improvise as I go. However, they'll roll and I do not control what's what. The guide. Yeah, I forgo the guide roll in the solo campaign. So I just have a villain. Then I roll for a connected item. Generally, I don't use the D20 for the connected guide and do the D10 by 5 method, you know, for the Twisted campaign. But yeah, completely different. Although I should note, at the end of Gordon's journey, I did not do rolls for the villain or calamity, because it was perfectly set up to have Carlisle as a villain with Nardadun's Gold Curse, and Varakas being involved since his calamity item was already a thing in the campaign. Thus leading both to be relevant things for it. Reverse campaigns. This is for those of your players who want to be evil. As you probably guessed, reverse means you do the rolls in the reverse. Your goal is to bring about a calamity. So, you choose like a calamity to start with that you want to enact. Then you get a villain to help you in order to create as an accomplice or something. And rather than fight a calamity at the end, one of the super powerful guides that I mentioned before will be the final boss to prevent you from doing so. And finally, Chaos Reverse Campaigns, which is the exact same thing. But with the Chaos rolls. You roll for Calamity, roll for a Villain, and roll for a Guide. Pretty simple, right? You want more Chaos for rolls? Then do a beginning scenario. This page is all good aligned scenarios. I've got a scenario for neutral and evil aligned scenarios. Now, don't let the names fool you. If you get an evil scenario, doesn't mean you're starting an evil campaign. It means there's situations where you're more likely to be in a situation that requires you to be evil. Like, let's look at the crime and punishment tree. You could be like the Skyrim. It could be like Skyrim, where you're a prisoner being transported. Or it could be like Oblivion, where you're in a dungeon. Yeah. Oddly enough, Moved by Sea would count for Morrowind, I think. I haven't played it, but I know you're shipped by boat. Actually, the Headsman Awake could also be Skyrim as well, because you're being transported. Oh my god. Jeez. Anywho, yeah. Grave robbing, being involved in a heist, needing to take down someone. Yeah, those are generally more in line with evil characters, but good aligned characters could be involved in that in some way or form as well. Now, as you can see, I've gotten 3 scenario pages, each of which have 4 different tables, like monster hunting, protecting the city, aiding a small village, being helping the people, you know, that stuff. And each one has 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them, giving you 120 phrases to use for beginning of the campaign. And yes, these are just small phrases. They're not in line with anything in particular. You're free to make it up as you go. Like, they're just to give you an idea and moniker for what can happen. For example, beast tracks. You don't have to... It could literally be any kind of beast. It can be where's the tracks leading to and all that, you know? Good way to start an adventure. To do this, I'd say roll a d6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Having 1 and 4 being involved in the first chart. Second chart could be 2 and 5. 3 and 6 could be the last one. Then roll a d4 for which specific table. And then roll a d10 for what you got, if you want a full roll. But yeah, other than that, it's simple. And that's basically what the system is. And if you don't like it, well, then go ahead and do it yourself. No, seriously, I mean it. Do it yourself. I've given you everything you need. It's a template you can work with. For example, I've already given you all the numbers you need. You just need to wipe out the stuff you don't like and put in the blank slates, you know? 6 guides, 8 villains, 20 calamities, 120 scenarios divide over 3 lists and 4 different tables. Yeah, if you don't like any of the ones I showed you, just make your own for that. That's the beautiful thing. This encourages creativity, improvisation, unpredictability, everything like that. That's what makes it amazing and beautiful in my eyes. And I'm happy to share it all with you. And that's all I have to share with you. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you want to, if you use this for whatever you want, for your campaigns, or if you make your own, like if you make your own trees, if you do all sorts of stuff, what kind of characters you'd make, what kind of calamities you'd create. Get the ball rolling. This is a free resource to help you create what you want. And I'm giving it to you all. The only thing I ask is simple. The roll of the dice is chaotic, but none more so than the algorithm. So be sure to like, subscribe, share the video. And if you loved the system, let me know what you do with it. Thank you for watching.